Well, you also missed the HIDC meeting yesterday, which is really just clunky. I know, it was clunky and weird. Clunky and weird.
Chris usually would tell me afterwards if there was something on the
I mean,
oh, she's coming.
yeah, I mean, you
I had a
know,
conflict.
I did like kind of I just like a weird moment. I was like,
We're ready to turn it on.
No, I know. It's just,
All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order, please. Would everybody rise for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You know, I've said to a lot of people that I would not come into this with any predisposition, but I'm going to make an exception to that. I think, given the turnout, we should put deer on every agenda for the rest of the year. If this is what it takes to get people to show up, I'm in. So what I'd like to do here, I've got to find my own notes, but I am going to try to summarize, I'll call it the pro and con, based on what we've received. Then I'm going to go through letters that have come in the last couple of days. I'm not going to read anybody's letters verbatim. In fact, those letters that I haven't covered in the summaries, I will probably highlight points that just didn't show up in the summaries that are kind of interesting to me. And then I'm going to talk about the rules of engagement, if you will. And I'm going to try to do all that in 10 to 12 minutes, if not less. So you'll bear with me for a moment. So first up is sort of what the Woods Committee has given us. And I'm going to skip around a little bit, but hopefully I can do this quickly. So the Irvington Woods, which is our largest native wooded parcel south of I-287, is deteriorating. As a result of severe deer browsing, the woods has lost many of its native understory and natural tree regeneration. Majority of its ground and shrub nesting songbird population is decreasing, and there's a decrease in the population of amphibians, reptiles, and small mammals. Plantings haven't been able to reverse the rate of decline, and the impact is accelerated by tree disease, invasive plants and vines, and open canopy. An extensive professional survey using installed cameras indicates a deer population 7 times greater than a sustainable woodlands deer population. The Irvington Woods Committee has spent significant time educating themselves and reviewing possible solutions. They've consulted outside experts and park and nature preserves in Westchester that have undertaken similar efforts. After studying the options, the committee concluded the most effective, and this includes cost, and humane approach is to employ a single highly qualified and vetted professional archer specializing in deer management. The options they studied included contraception, which is not commercially available in New York State, and it's extremely difficult to implement in a roaming population. Repellent and frightening devices, and the effectiveness is short-lived as the animals adapt. Habitat alteration, which is removal of vegetation, which goes against efforts to revitalize the Irvington Woods Park. Capture and relocation, which is difficult and expensive and causes stress with up to 25% deer mortality, and tranquilizers pose a health risk to humans if exposed. Predator introduction, poison, parasite, or disease introduction, capture and kill, bait and shoot, which is unsafe and severe. And then, of course, there's no intervention, which is to accept the consequences of increased damage to the entire ecosystem, including flooding and loss of carbon capture, increase of car collision, and rates of tick-borne diseases. So to describe the Archer's method, it seeks safety. It follows New York State regulations. The shooting is always downward from an 18 to 20 foot height within a 20-yard range from a high vantage point in a tree. There is great visibility. It's data driven. It uses weather patterns and camera information on patterns of deer behavior and movement to minimize the time needed in the preserve. It's discreet. It goes where the deer are and people are not. The hunter is highly experienced with 20 plus years as a top hunter in Westchester County Parks hunting program. It uses best practices in deer management with a focus on system dynamics, and it works October through December between 4 a.m. and 9 a.m. in places and times when people are not present. The meat will be donated to food banks, and it has successfully reduced the deer population in Teatown Lake Reservation, which is about 1,000 acres, without interference of public use of property. So the objective as expressed by the Woods Committee is to restore deer numbers in Irvington Woods to a healthy balance, which is in their, by their definition, roughly 20 per square mile, and to allow for regeneration of native plants and trees and the many species that depend upon them. Without regeneration, it's predicted the woods will have 50% fewer trees by 2050, as well as declines in carbon sequestration, stormwater absorption, air quality, our sound barrier from Sawmill Parkway, and biodiversity and habitat, including most of ground and shrub nesting birds. So that's sort of one side of it. And keep in mind, some of them could be my opinions, but that is not why I'm describing them. I'm giving you both sides from what we've heard, so that in some cases you may just get up and say, I agree with one or I agree with the other. You're welcome to use the time that we're going to discuss, but it may make it a little more efficient. So to give the other side, I'm using a letter that was written to us with 27 signatories. And they are saying, we're writing to oppose the plan put forth by the Irvington Woods Committee to hire a hunter to kill deer in the Irvington Woods. We recognize the legitimate problem identified by the committee, but the existence of a problem doesn't automatically justify any solution, especially a problematic one involving the bow hunting of deer. It's immoral and barbaric to send a hunter into the woods to painfully kill these large mammals with a bow and arrow, and especially problematic to do so with taxpayer money in the name of the village. It's not what we want our village to stand for. Second, the idea is to save the woods, but this proposed solution would turn the woods into a hunting ground that would not be hospitable to visitors. What parent would want to take young children into the woods knowing that the child might hear the screams of a dying deer or watch the dead body of a killed deer is hauled out of the park? The hunter claims no one will be in danger, but how can you really feel safe in the woods knowing there's a hunter there who is actively hunting? The proposed killing of the deer is not even sure to solve the problem. Deer don't know village borders. There's nothing keeping other deer from filling the void by the deer killed by the hunter. In fact, the hunter that the committee wants to hire admitted in his testimony to the village board that neighboring deer will come to the woods to replace the ones that are killed. What is clear is that we don't know if killing the deer will have the desired effect. To take such an extreme action as bow hunting deer in the Irvington Woods, the effectiveness of the plan should be far more sure than it is. Is this the kind of village we want to be? A village that will slaughter deer with arrows in our woods when we can't even be sure doing so would address the problem? We applaud the work the committee has done in identifying the problem, but wish the committee would recognize how problematic this proposed solution is and continue to explore other options. It should be noted that while Hastings, Dobbs, and Terrytown all have wooded areas and face the same problem we do from the deer who graze in their woods, only Irvington is considering killing the deer. That says a lot. Hastings is attempting to use fencing to protect a portion of the woods. At the very least, Irvington should try something like that before jumping to killing the deer. If killing the deer is such a surefire, effective solution, and there's no moral problem killing the deer, why aren't these other villages doing it? The reluctance of our neighbors should give us pause. We urge the village board to take the problem seriously and explore possible ways to improve the situation in the Irvington Woods, but we don't support bow hunting in the woods as a viable or morally defensible solution. Other solutions, including fencing, should be explored. So let me now, so that's sort of how I saw the two sides. And other than what I'm going to say up front, and I'm about to do the other letters, we're not really going to speak or react to what you have to say. We're going to listen. That's what this is about. and then we'll have to discuss it and make a decision to do something or nothing or whatever. So I'm now going to run through the letters that I got. And in this case, I am going to mention names only because if this were a regular board meeting, we would have done that anyway. And it saves me the trouble of doing it twice at the next board meeting. So this is from, and forgive me if I mispronounce names, Steve Fondiller. Basically, he said, I support bow hunting. This has worked at other preserves in Westchester. A fence would present a barrier that bears might climb and damage, might be hurtful to coyotes. I fully support our wild carnivores. And a fence would seem to be an unnecessary ongoing expense. Carol Summerfield, I ask you to approve the sound deer management strategy recommended by the Irvington Woods Committee. The science is clear. Culling overpopulated deer herds is the most humane, economical, and sound strategy to maintain a healthy ecosystem. To approve this plan is a difficult but necessary decision, the one that will save this important ecosystem for future generations of people, animals, and plants. Steve Wolfert, I'm writing in strong opposition to the Irvington Woods Committee's proposal to control the deer population through lethal means. There are numerous non-lethal, more humane, more effective, and less expensive methods of controlling the deer population than culling. Research shows that in addition to being impractical and unsafe, it often results in the opposite of the intended effect by increasing the deer population rather than reducing it. The committee should consider contraception, sterilization, relocation, translocation. Sajan Abraham, thanks for addressing the large deer problem we have in Irvington. They're causing a massive ecological damage. They're a serious hazard when driving. They're also a vector for Lyme disease. Maura Gadid, I strongly support the Irvington Woods Committee proposal for deer management. Unlike solutions other villages have tried that push deer into neighboring communities, this one addresses the problem in a way that benefits everyone both inside and outside the boundaries of the village of Irvington. Delina Cody, I wish to express my support for the plan put forth by the Irvington Woods Committee for managing deer in the Irvington Woods. The deer problem is at such a level that hunting is the only viable solution. It's our responsibility as a society to return more of a balance to our environment. I'm increasingly concerned about the lack of forest regeneration and growth. If we don't reduce the deer population, we will eventually no longer have the Irvington Woods. No one is happy that deer hunting is the solution. However, it must be the solution. I very much hope that the Board of Trustees puts the long-term health of Irvington Woods and our natural environment as its first priority in moving forward with hunting in the Irvington Woods to reduce the deer population. This one I'm going to give anonymously because the person asked that it be anonymous, but there were a few points that aren't covered elsewhere, so I did want to mention it. They wrote in support of the bow hunting proposal. They came from a state where deer hunting was very common. They see more and more deer in their immediate environment where they live. They are so destructive, I've given up on planting annuals as they demolish hydrangea bushes by the end of the season. The hostas are decimated. I planted deer-resistant plants last spring, which were recommended by a landscape architect, and the deer still ate them, much to my disappointment. Getting near the end, I think. This one is from Todd Wilson. I'd like to reiterate my support for a controlled bow hunting effort in Irvington Woods. I understand that a few animal rights activists are opposed, but I would counter that somebody who cares about the well-being of animals does not get in the way of a good plan to control the number of deer in our area herds. It's no kindness to let them starve when restoring the natural balance is a reasonable option. Bard and Barbara Bounez, my wife and I support the proposed bow and arrow deer culling plan. Michael Hanna, could the village work to encourage Columbia University and Mercy to contribute resources, coordination, and financing to the effort? Attached a photo of 12 plus deer he saw recently on Columbia Neva's property. Diana Barella vehemently objects to the idea of deer hunting in Irvington. We enjoy seeing the deer in the woods when we walk, she asked that we post the videos from the trail cameras telling her that there are 100 deer per square mile or whatever has been quoted. She also states, I think what we all recognize, we created the problem, not the deer or any other animal. This is Ronald Horwitz-Bard, who attached an academic paper from a Yale professor who's with the School of Forestry and Environmental Science, whose conclusions reviewing information for a park in Washington, D.C. Stated that there's little evidence that the deer are the source of the problem, and this was deforestation. And data from other sites can't be applied to this area in question as there are other variables and factors. Pierrette Pillon. My family has resided in the Irvington School District for more than 15 years. We have 2 children in the Irvington Woods, in the Irvington schools, plus a graduate currently in college. Saddened by the news of the proposed bow hunting strategy for deer management in Irvington, and personally opposed to the idea of such a measure. I do not want my personal feelings to be the focus of my letter. Instead, I want to address 3 areas of concern: the effectiveness of deer mitigation in general, that is a proposed method. And she cites a study that the author notes long-term success has not been well documented, and evidence that is available suggests long-term planning and continued management, i.e. additional culling in the future, are essential. The second point you want to make is the importance of community engagement. She states, it's my sincere hope the village will take the necessary time to assess and consider the current community-wide view of this issue before deciding how or even whether to pursue deer mitigation. And the third point was the potential risk to public safety. She points out that teenagers, among others, like to hang out in our community late at night in the woods. So it's not only a matter of public safety, but important to avoid the possible trauma associated with witnessing what would undoubtedly be a horrific scene. And Melinda Chapelier, I'm writing in support of a professional archer to control the deer population in Irvington Woods. After years of consideration and taxpayer spending, our qualified and trusted employees at the Parks Department and Woods Committee have reached this conclusion and recommendation. After reading their recommendation, I agree they have reached the most effective and financially prudent option to protect Irvington's historical investment in the woods. And Jill Balin, I appreciate that you have an emotionally difficult decision to make from a financial and as humanitarian as possible point of view. Dealing with this ecological problem is certainly best solved with the Woods Committee's recommendation of hiring a professional bow hunter. Good luck coming to terms yourselves with announcing such a difficult decision. But I know you'll do the right thing. Okay, yeah. Whatever that is, we will be doing the right thing, I can guarantee you. Okay, that's the end of my reading letters and whatever. So now I'm going to give you the rules of engagement. So bottom line is the board is here to listen to your thoughts and about how best to preserve the Irvington Woods, which is a unique village asset with benefits for the community and the environment. Obviously, you've heard, I don't think anybody disagrees that we have a problem, and it has an impact not only on carbon sequestration, there is a financial impact because the diminishment of the woods will impact the flooding that we have. That's where the water's coming from that flows through Irvington. So that is something to consider, whatever we decide to do. Second, since the board asked the Woods Committee for input and they have provided it, we're looking in particular for your thoughts about their report to the board, and you've already heard that, the contents of it. Speakers are going to be selected by me, and I will alternate between online and those present in the room. I may shift it a little bit depending on who's online and who's present raising their hands. Since the board has to make a decision to do something recommended or something else or nothing, please address the board, not each other, particularly when someone else is speaking. Don't interrupt, don't cut them off. Some of this is a little bit of my being shell-shocked from having done this 12 years ago, so I know what this can devolve to. It's not going to happen tonight, I guarantee you that. Nobody gets second turns. There will be no second turns. Everyone gets one turn to speak. If you have more to add, we will take letters, not a problem. Brevity is a virtue. However, if you finish in less than the allocated time, which is 3 minutes, you can't cede your time to somebody else. So this is not Washington. When it's your turn, please state your name, where you're from. I'll exercise discretion in letting those not from Irvington or the school district speak, but they still have to state their name, where they're from, including whether they represent a particular organization. From my perspective, and this is a personal one, those who live in Irvington or the school district are certainly going to carry more weight than somebody who comes in from an outsider. They may be, as an outsider, they may be experts, so I'll listen, but I'm interested in what the community has to say, since we're going to pay for this one way or another. And as I said earlier, the board isn't going to comment except for the not so brief summary that I provided previously. So with that having been said, I'm going to open the floodgates and we'll start. So I guess maybe not only are we alternating online, but maybe I'll go right, left, just to, so anybody on the right side want to go? Raise your hand. All right, let's start up front. Go ahead.
So good evening, board. My name is Matthew Scott Hansen. I'm from Irvington, but I currently reside in Dobbs Ferry.
Sorry, can I say one more thing?
Yes.
I'll give you a heads up when you got about 20 seconds left.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Sorry, my name is Matthew Scott Hansen. I'm from Irvington, but I currently now reside in Dobbs Ferry. And I'm here as a private citizen, but I'm also the chair of the Dobbs Ferry Conservation Advisory Board, one of the village boards in Dobbs Ferry. And I can say that our Board of Trustees is in the pre-stages of having a similar hearing to the one that's happening here, inspired by the efforts here. My statement is as follows. I grew up spending every moment of my free time running around the Irvington and Dobbs Ferry woods with my friends. The understory was indeed much thicker and healthier in those days, and the smaller deer population at that time had a much larger woodland area in which to graze. On top of countless individual houses fencing in their yards, there's been a massive addition of large housing developments added to Irvington on what were woodlands in the 70s and 80s since my childhood, such as at the peak of Cyrusfield Road, on the former Halsey Castle property, the Beechwood and Butterwood developments opposite the Nevis property on Broadway, Pennybridge in East Irvington, and not to mention the entire development of the condominiums at the top of Main Street, which stretch all the way to the reservoir and used to be woods. All of that pushes the deer into the remaining woods and yards, where their damage to all of the animals and plants in the woods ecosystem has been catastrophic and tragic. Yes, to the untrained eye, the woods still look beautiful, like beautiful woods for now, but countless species in that ecosystem are in a death spiral due to the unchecked advance of just one species, the deer. It's unfair that so much death can be willingly caused in the name of letting one species spread uncontrolled. Thank you.
Anybody on this side?
Hi, sorry, Mylene Bach. I live at on Hudson Avenue off the Sunnyside. So I back up to the little strip of Irvington Woods that stretches sort of towards the river. We've been there for about 10 years, and I have not prepared anything, obviously, so I'll speak a little off the cuff. I just want to speak as a homeowner. One of the things that drew us to our property was that it's next to the woods. It's a beautiful piece of land. And I have to say, when we first moved in, when my son was a baby, one of my fondest memories is of him pulling himself up on the windowsill to stand, to point at the deer. One of his first words was a D, it was one of the first things he said, pointing to the deer that constantly come through our yard. They're extremely charming. We love to look at them. They're graceful creatures, wonderful. However, over the years, the herd that comes through has gotten bigger and bigger. We've gotten now to the point where the kids don't want to play in the yard anymore because there is so many remains of what the deer leave behind. They dig up the yard, they're constantly out drinking, and we are constantly checking the kids for ticks coming in from the yard. And it's very clear that the numbers have just gotten out of hand. I mean, today alone, I took a picture of a full dozen grazing in my yard. And that's not an unheard of occurrence. It's pretty much every day. I understand the whole concern about hiring a hunter because of shooting near buildings and all of these other factors, but it sounds like the person is skilled and has experience in mitigating the risks. There doesn't seem to be any other way of reducing the number of deer that is feasible. And honestly, it's something that if it were legal, I would have done on my own property a long time ago. I've sat around with friends on my patio watching the herd graze and ruminating on how we could possibly legally figure out how to shoot them ourselves, because it is really that much of a problem on a regular basis on our property. And I would say that, you know, we back up to the Penny Bridge condos. I understand the deforestation there. It wasn't ideal. I mean, I've heard of older neighbors and how wonderful and how big the forest was at that time. But we have to live within the reality now that there is not room for this many deer to live peaceably with people. You know, it's just not a hygienic situation. We used to have my son's birthday in the backyard and kids would run around without their shoes and have the sprinkler on, but now that's not really an option anymore. And so it's getting to the point where the things that were beautiful and wonderful about the property are no longer usable. And
20 seconds.
And that's really, I know it's a selfish point of view, but this is part of the calculus for homeowners in the area as well. So
Thank you.
thank you.
You want to pick somebody up? Any idea how many you got on one? Well,
That's right there.
oh, okay.
41, I think.
41, all right.
Yeah. That's gonna be all.
You're challenging me, so.
Aaron Bernstein.
Hi, I'm Erin Bernstein. I live off of Taxter. I'm in the Irvington School District. And this just feels like a really barbaric measure when there's probably other options that could be explored. And if I recall correctly, the Irvington Woods Committee also spoke about fencing as one of the two options, and as opposed to bow hunting, but I'm not sure that the fencing has been fully explored. I'll add anecdotally, we have a fence on our property, and on the other side of our fence, similar to what the last speaker just shared, we see many deer in our neighbor's yard. And I know actually our neighbor loves seeing all the deer, and we do too, but they're not in our yard because we have a fence. So the fence seems fairly effective, just on a personal level. The committee members mentioned fencing the entire woods. However, it makes more sense to try fencing maybe in a smaller portion of the woods first and seeing what happens. And it just seems like we're rushing to extreme measures with uncertain results without exploring and exhausting all the possibilities, especially ones that are not inhumane. The bow hunting apparently costs about $31,000 a year. It's a 5-year plan, and we'll be using taxpayer money out of the village budget to pay for this. And it just seems like a really sort of easy way out to solve a nuisance of a problem. And I would think that if we were ever speaking to our children about solving for a nuisance, we wouldn't recommend an extreme measure. We would explore a lot more humane, reasonable ideas before going to the most extreme measure. And when I hear about populations overrunning a community, we have, as humans, obviously constructed a lot of buildings and residences, and maybe have also, contributed to the problem. And I don't think we're talking about extreme measures in terms of knocking down buildings or relocating human beings. So I'd like us to consider other options that maybe haven't been fully explored. And sorry if that sounds really severe, but just the idea of shooting animals just sounds really severe to me.
Thank you.
Um,
Anybody else? Go ahead. I'll sort of work my way back, sorry. It's as good a system as any.
Hi, hi, can you hear me? Hi, my name is Arthur Smilios. I live right on Buckout Street here. I don't have anything prepared either, so I'm just going to extemporize, but I do want to say, it seems to me that this problem, the cause of this problem was human intervention, violent human intervention. And I'm just positing a question now. Do we really want to perpetuate that cycle and try to resolve the problem with a very, very extreme form of violence? I just, however somebody wants to sell it, bow hunting is the cruelest way that we can kill an animal. My personal feeling is that I don't kill. I don't promote killing. I think there have to be other ways. And I think that this resorting to violence is what has gotten us into so many problems, from this one to the greater problems in the world. But just if everybody can look it up, bow hunting is one of the cruelest ways to kill an animal. It's slow, it's painful, and I'm not an advocate of guns, but if somebody were telling me that I would be executed, I would ask for a gunshot to the head. And the last way I'd want to go is to be shot with a bow and arrow. I understand that there's people who promote it as this romantic, back to the land way of killing, but some things that were old weren't necessarily good, and we moved on from them, and I think that bow hunting is one of those. Now, again, I implore you to look at other more humane ways of resolving this problem. But if it comes down to the fact that it's decided democratically that we have to kill the animals, bow hunting is absolutely one of the most barbaric and cruel ways to do it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ready for this side? Peter Nolan from East Irvington up on Mountain Road, so I'm close to the preserve. I go in the preserve usually once or twice a week to usually mountain bike or hike with my family. I'm definitely for the culling of the herds because they frequent my backyard, and this winter was especially pretty much decimated all of my rhododendron. So I've one of those typical yards where you can kind of see everything underneath 6 feet and down. And I find that they don't only just trim and kind of nibble on my yard, they tend to take the plant and pull it up. So I think, like, for everyone, it's a huge frustration and cost of money for anyone who's trying to garden outside. And yes, I agree, it's all human intervention with the, but that's the cause of many of our ills of the world, because the world's overpopulated, but we aren't here for that. But so I think that I have to trust, and I've seen the science with at the preserve and what they've done. It's not some off-the-cuff decision, so I feel like that they've really done their homework on this, and this is not some shoot from the cuff. Hey, let's we see a problem, we're just going to shoot some deer. This is definitely something that they've thought about. They've if they're going to use the meat for eating, it's even better. So it's they've really thought it right through. I also want to bring up the fact no one's really talked about the tick population. We've touched on it, but I think deer, from what I've read, can generally carry up to 5,000 ticks for each deer. So we're a herd of 12, so you're carrying quite a few ticks, 6,000 ticks. So I think for me, walking outside in the garden has gotten especially bad pulling off ticks every time I come inside. For anybody with small kids who want to play outside, I think stepping in deer poop is kind of small. I don't want to, but I think that the tick is a bigger problem, and having these kids exposed to that, being able to go to the woods and so forth is a bigger problem. So let me just check my notes, but I think the other solutions like the fencing, it's to be miles of fence. Trees fall every day here in these storms. So I just feel the upkeep of the fence would be far greater than the $30,000 a year, if that's what the actual cost is for the bow hunter. Would be much more intense. And plus, it prevents people from being able to walk through the woods and in and out wherever they want to. And I think that's the nice part of having the woods like it is.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kate Taylor, and I live on South Eckert in Irvington. I support the Woods Committee recommendations. I grew up on a property in Fairfield County, Connecticut that bordered state forests where hunting was permitted. The understory was much thicker there, and we as children and teenagers were educated on how to be safe in the woods during hunting season. My family has had serious tick-borne disease, and I choose to live in the village of Irvington village proper to mitigate my tick-borne disease concerns. Honestly, and now they're on our street. I support the bow hunting, and I feel like we're paying for the lack of understory with the flooding along Burney Park. I feel like fencing is unrealistic ecologically and economically. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I don't have anything prepared either, but I am,
But you do have to tell us your name and where you live.
I will. I'm Renee Shamish. I am the co-president of Garden Club of Irvington. I've been a member of the Garden Club of Irvington for 16 years. I've lived in Irvington for 36 years. I'm also a member of the Irvington Beautification Committee. We do the window boxes on Main Street. And over the last number of years since I lived here, I've seen a tremendous increase in the deer. This is an emotional issue for so many of us, and no one wants to see deer killed. But I think that if humans created this problem, humans have to do something about this problem. I think that I would strongly recommend what the Irvington Woods Committee has researched and support it very strongly to help deal with this problem. It seems like the best way to address this issue. Thank you.
Anybody? All right, we'll finish the front row. Go ahead. Okay.
My name is Eric Oley. I live in Irvington. I've lived in Irvington for the last 24 years, but I also grew up in Irvington on a property adjacent to the Irvington Woods. Spent my youth exploring the woods by myself, with my friends, with my father, my family. I love the woods. I remember what the understory used to look like and how much healthier the woods were. I hate hunting. I could never kill anything. I hate guns. I don't want to shoot guns. I've never introduced them to my children. But I'm not going to make the leap to say that someone who hunts is immoral. This is my personal decision, my personal belief. I see no other solution than the solution that's recommended by the Woods Committee. I actually think it's a humane decision. And I see a fence as merely pushing our problem away onto our neighbors. I mean, basically what we need to do is call the herds of deer in Irvington, in Dobbs Ferry, in Tarrytown, in the neighboring communities. I've been following what's happening in Hastings, and it seems like it's kind of a joke what's going on in Hastings. Plus, they do not have the size of the woods that we have. We have a huge portion of woods, which is just a fantastic resource, and we have to. It's our obligation to maintain that resource and to keep it healthy. You know, there was a lot of work that went into assembling the acreage that now is open space and village land, and we have to respect that tradition, and we have to make sure that it's there for our children and for future generations. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I have one written that's been typed in, and then I'll go to a speaker after that.
Okay.
Jonathan Ackerman supports the Irvington Woods Committee solution. They've seen continued deforesting in the woods, often have multiple deer grazing on their property, locally have eaten their planted vegetation, leaving large amounts of droppings, mentioned tick-borne illnesses, and just overall supports the proposal. And next is Nikki Coddington.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm Nikki Coddington. I've lived in Irvington for 32 years, and I'm a member of the Irvington Woods Committee. And I have a prepared statement. I feel compassion for deer, and I also feel compassion for all other native wildlife that live in our woods or used to live there before their habitat was decimated by deer overbrowse. My position is that the Woods Committee's recommendation is the most humane and the one that expresses the greatest care for all the living beings in the wood ecosystem. In an ecosystem, everything is connected. It's probably obvious that species such as birds that nest in the understory suffer from the destruction of that understory, but the effects are much broader. To help people understand the ripple effects of deer overpopulation and other species, I will quote from a 2005 study by Audubon, Pennsylvania, quote, "Managing white-tailed deer in forest habitat from an ecosystem perspective," unquote. Quote, "Overbrowsing eliminates the shrub layer and greatly reduces the diversity of forest floor plant species. With the lower layers of the forest thus impoverished, vertical diversity, herbaceous, shrub, subcanopy, and canopy, and horizontal diversity, the patchy mosaic of different plant species across the forest landscape are greatly diminished. Subcanopy trees tend to be short-lived, where deer eat all of their seedlings, an entire layer is vulnerable to disappearing, even though it's beyond the deer's reach. Overbrowsing reduces or eliminates species required by animals that are narrowly specialized to eat only one or a few species. It reduces or eliminates critical habitat features such as oviposition, that's egg laying, sites for insects and other invertebrates. It allows greater wind speed, increases light and thus temperature, and reduces humidity at the forest floor. These microclimatic effects are especially detrimental to snails, other forest gastropods, salamanders, frogs, and other animals dependent on moist, protected environments. Indirect effects ripple outward to affect animals further removed from deer and their food plants. For example, the reduction of white-footed mouse, deer mouse, chipmunk, gray squirrel, and other small mammal densities due to competition with densely populated deer for mast, that's acorns, can lead to reductions in predator populations that feed on them, including owls, hawks, and others. Reductions in certain insect population indirectly affect a host of insectivorous vertebrate species, including shrews, rodents, bats, wood warblers, flycatchers, and other bird groups, frogs, toads, and salamanders, end quote. Aldo Leopold, one of the first ecologists to warn about the threats expanding deer herds posed to forest health over 80 years ago, when their
Vicky,
natural...
You got about 30. No problem. I'll give you 30 seconds from when I stop talking. Go.
When the threats expanding deer herds posed to forest health when their natural predators were removed, said, quote, "A thing is right when it tends to preserve the integrity, stability, and beauty of the abiotic community. It is wrong when it tends otherwise," end quote.
Thank you. And I feel bad cutting off a former mayor. Okay, let's see, this side. Go ahead.
Can I just talk from here?
No, because if they can't hear you if you're not on the mic. Sorry about that.
I didn't really prepare anything either because I've.
Neither did I. So
anyway,
don't worry
okay.
about it.
So,
Your name and where you live.
okay, I'm Lauren Cooper. I live on Mallard Rise in East Irvington, the place where if you go to the nursery and to buy plants and they say, "Where are you from?" and they say you can have like these 3 plants, which isn't even true. But I am a complete pacifist. I want to say first and foremost, I hate weapons. I can't even look at it. And I grew up in the Ethical Culture Society. I understand all of these issues, but in this case, I have to say that I don't think the current situation makes us good stewards of the land. Those deer have to go. And I feel like, I know people have said, and I think you said that the Irvington Woods are so beautiful, and when you walk through, you can't see it. I actually disagree. I've only lived here about 9 years now. We came from overseas. I grew up in Pleasantville. And actually, I've watched it just in 9 years get worse and worse and worse. And I actually find the woods, and I walk in there a lot. I have a dog. I love it. We're very, very close. It's a 90-second drive from my house. Fantastic. But I find it really, really eerie, I want to say, because there's nothing alive in there that you can see. That is not the way that woods are supposed to look. And the trees are dying, whatever. I'm so glad that there are people studying what to do, because it actually makes me really, really sad. So I want to say about the deer, I love animals so much. I grew up, I was allowed to have any pet I wanted, including snakes, whatever. I love animals. But I actually think that it's really dangerous situation for the deer. Where I live, we have had a fawn born in our yard. And within a day, the fawn was left in the grass. It was adorable. We all researched it and watched it. It was so cute. The mom was then hit by a car on East Sunnyside, and that deer ran around the neighborhood crying and crying, the fawn. Everyone was trying to catch it and figure out what to do. It's not safe for them to have such overpopulation and be just being pushed out. And the same situation with the fence. I actually think the fence is the worst possible and actually a very selfish solution because our property is, as many people have mentioned, completely overpopulated. So you're pushing the deer out onto the roads where they're going to get hit by cars and out onto the properties of other people, and we can't use our property. Our property, we are working so hard to be good stewards of our land, and nothing can grow because the deer, which have actually become almost aggressive, I can't even chase them away. They stare us down. I park my car. I sometimes can't get out. They're standing in front of my house.
20 seconds.
Okay, anyway, so I think that's, and the Lyme disease, please, we've all had Lyme disease. It's really, really awful. So let's just take care. I think actually it would be a service to the deer to help them have an environment that can sustain them, which it can't. So,
Thank you. Anyone over there? All right, Jan, come on up.
I'll ad-lib it in addition to what I've written. I'm Jan Blair, and I live on Lewis Road, and I've lived here for 40 years. And actually, I live where there's a lot of woods, John knows. And I haven't seen as many deer as I have in the past. In Irvington, in the past, when we had environmentally sensitive areas, we had a biologist come in and do a study. Everybody's talking about all the little critters that are out there and the mucky muck and all around. But we don't really know exactly what we have because I don't think anybody here is a biologist. So that would be my first suggestion. I don't believe there's been enough evaluation of the woods by a professional to ascertain that these things are existing or did exist or could exist even in the future. The answer is there are too many people. That's the problem. That's the quick answer. There are things that could be done before making a final decision. In the past, Hastings did a flyover. And a flyover with the thermal heat, you could do it in the night and you can see exactly how many deer and where they are. And it's a very accurate reading. It worked great, the flyover. And actually the professional that was here at that meeting the last time, I said to him, I wish they'd do a flyover. And he said, yeah, I wish they would. So that was his opinion. If you put it, people talked about a fence. If you put up a fence, Hastings just put up a fence. $200,000 on 30 acres. That's a one-time expense. This is going to cost the village a lot of money to hire an archer to come back every single year. And when you kill the deer, the new deer that are existing.
Wait, time out. Talk to me and nobody else make comments.
The deer that are existing have 2 fawns instead of 1. So that'll increase. The fencing, there's different kinds of fencing. There's wire fencing, but I told Charlotte Binns something about a slash fence, which is different. You build it with trees and limbs and twigs. It's all natural. It could be a project for the kids at the nature center. And it's a great, very natural looking, lasts forever. You just keep building it up with more and more and more trees and limbs. So since we're so densely populated, you run the risk of deer with an arrow in its body running out into the street or onto someone's yard if the archer fails to kill the deer. And I think if there's areas of really, where you say, I really must save this, fence it in. Do a pilot project. My suggestion would be try to do a pager project. And the other thing is, there are a lot of people in the woods, and you might want to consider designated trails for mountain bikes, because there are a lot of people riding mountain bikes in there, and I think that also kills the understory. So that's another suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one person with their hand up. They also submitted written, so I'm not sure if they want to talk or not.
All right.
We'll find it. We'll find out right now. Okay. John Price.
Thank you, Larry. My name is John Price. I'm an 18-year Irvington resident. I support the culling of the deer by a professional hunter to protect our woods, but more importantly, to protect our people. In Westchester, we are only allowed to hunt deer with our cars. My daughter and I have had 5 car versus deer incidents. 3 deer killed immediately and 2 wounded. As I understand it now, the deer that I thought had been wounded likely died very painfully in the woods. Overpopulation also leads to population crashes. Starvation is not a pleasant way to go. I have had Lyme disease 3 times. It never leaves you. Please protect your children and pets. I firmly believe culling would be the most sensible approach for the deer and humans in Irving to coexist. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, how about far back right? Sorry to do that to you, Dad. Everybody else has to get out. Yes, very true.
Hey everybody, I'm Francis O'Shea. I live at 8 Maple Street. I've lived here for 10 years. I'm a volunteer that is a part of the Irvington Woods Committee. I'm also lucky enough to be a volunteer firefighter and work for FACE. At least I have worked for FACE on the Rocktoberfest. And I say all that not to brag, although I am proud of it, but to say to the board that I've had the pleasure of being a volunteer in this town for not as long as some, but longer than others in this room. And I've never even come close to seeing the amount of work, due diligence, serious consideration, moral discussions about morality. I've never seen a better group of volunteers come together than this committee to bring this recommendation to the board now. And I think that without getting into the specifics, many of the arguments against are not informed. And if folks that disagreed with this recommendation had been a part of that process and were willing to actually read the materials, they would understand that this is a serious recommendation that's come from literally years of research. The board knows, but some in the room may not, that the previous mayor denied our last recommendation, essentially said, we need to know a lot more. And we've been spending that entire time knocking our heads together and figuring it out. So while I know that it is a very difficult decision to come to, I'd like to leave you with the thought that you are the stewards of the woods because you have the power to do what we recommend. And moral arguments aside, which I respect and may not always be able to be swayed, if you don't do anything, you're not doing your job. So I would recommend, it does not brook delay. It's a win for those that are against this to have you say, let's consider things more. We've been considering it for years, and this is a very well thought out proposal. So I would strongly recommend that upon considering it further, you take the recommendations of the committee. Thank you.
Okay, back, yes, on the come on up.
Hello, Zoe Hamilton von Bauer, Irvington resident for the last 12 years and chair of the Irvington Woods Committee. My involvement with, I've always used the woods. I have a dog. My husband and I love hiking. We're out there every week. And my involvement with the Irvington Woods Committee began as a Girl Scouts liaison 5 years ago. And for the last few years, I've been involved working alongside CJ. We've been creating volunteer efforts to remove the invasives and plant trees. I cannot express enough how important the Woods Park has become to me and my family. Irvington is incredibly fortunate to have had forward-thinking citizens protect a large parcel of land from development for our community. I believe it is our responsibility to not just have saved the land from development, but also to care for it. And unfortunately, we must face that hard decisions may need to be made. The overpopulation of deer has been in our view for the last couple of decades. The Board of Trustees formed the Irvington Woods Committee as stewards for the Irvington Woods Park. At this time in our history, it is time for us to take the necessary steps to ensure the future of the largest park in southern Westchester. We have 288 signatures on a petition supporting such a proposal. We are asking the Board of Trustees to take critical action. And I would like to read you a few comments that were a part of the petition. The findings and research are conclusive, and we must take action to maintain the balance of our ecosystem. I also believe making a donation to the food bank is a win for us all. We have an opportunity to do the right thing, and we all lose if we do nothing. The deer has become out of control. Last week, a deer and its family broke down our fence to feed on our trees. As a result, the fence is in need of significant repair. Living across from the Columbia property allows us to see dozens of deer every day feeding on our trees, grass, etc., and the number of deer have become outrageous. One other factor in the multiplication of deer will also inevitably mean more car accidents in the area, as the deer are consistently wandering through the neighborhoods and at night with limited lighting will cause fender benders. I absolutely agree with that the local deer population has to be decreased due to its negative impact on the ecosystem. There is nothing natural about deer overpopulation, which is entirely due to human factors, such as elimination of natural predators, elimination of habitat, etc.
About 20 seconds.
Okay. From outside the village, I am incredibly thankful that your community is demonstrating an effort to manage the deer. Curbing deer populations is essential for the recovery of healthy forests and for the resilience of our landscape now and into the future. And I'll leave you with, I've been waiting to sign this petition for years. Thank you for making it happen.
So again, I have one written comment, and then we still have people waiting. Sandra Abate, strong supporter of the Irvington Woods Initiative, lifelong Rivertowns resident, now an East Irvington resident. Ignoring the population is in itself barbaric, as the woods themselves are being decimated. That's the general gist of the comment. And now Sarah Riley.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
My name is Sarah Riley and I live at 3 Heritage Hill Road, which is the only home in Irvington that lives entirely inside of the nature preserve, adjacent to the East Irving, the high school East sports field. Because our home lives within the borders of the woods, I think it is a very unique perspective that reflects the damage that the deer are doing and will only increase over the years if left unchecked. Our primary concern is the exponential growth of the deer tick population and its impact on the health and safety of everyone that uses the woods and the school fields, as well as the Aqueduct Trail. Lyme disease runs rampant in our area. My husband contracted Lyme disease in 1992 when hiking and fishing around the ice pond adjacent to, at the time, his parents' house, which is now our house. 6 years after, inadequately treated for the disease crept back. He was at death's door and required years of intravenous treatments before recovering. He is now a chronic Lyme sufferer and requires constant monitoring. His mother, Susan Riley, living at the same residence, tested positive more than 10 times for Lyme disease and almost died of ehrlichiosis, another tick-borne disease. Deer and mice are the primary carriers of the deer tick, and as the deer population grows, so does the tick population. Because of the prevalent Lyme disease on our property itself, we do a tick check by dragging a white sheet across our lawn and counting the ticks that are picked up. This is by the CDC called the tick dragging method, and it is used to monitor tick population. 5 years ago, when we moved into the house, I dragged the lawn and found 20 ticks. Now, as of last year, we found 200 ticks on our lawn in that one pass. This infestation is assaulting our woods and our lawns and our athletic fields. I don't know anyone that would want their children to run barefoot through a yard with this number of ticks because it guarantees disease. This problem is not one that just me and my children suffer from, but every child that goes through the Irvington School District is going to suffer this risk because they participate in activities on the school fields. The infestation of the deer also impacts the health of the woods as an ecosystem. The deer are eating the understory of the forest. We've heard about the native plants that are deteriorating because of the deer imbalance, but we don't necessarily know why that impacts the tick population. When all of the native plants are eliminated, invasive species grow, particularly the Japanese barberry. It is resilient in all growing conditions, and it is impossible to kill without digging up the entire plant and all of its root pieces. It grows
Sarah,
rapidly.
you have about 20 seconds.
Germinates freely, and harbors ticks. When the deer eat all of the vegetation, the Japanese barberry grows. The dense brambles are perfect breeding ground for mice that carry Lyme and pass it on to the deer. Ticks are active in areas of barberry, and our woods are consumed by barberry. I have an emotional response to deer as well, as they do detrimental damage to our property. It prevents us from enjoying our recreational lawn, and it kills all of my gardening, including my organic vegetable and fruit gardens. I
Sarah,
am a strong
Sarah,
proponent of
Sarah.
supporting the deer culling population. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Charlotte.
Hi, I'm Charlotte Binns. I've been a volunteer on the Irvington Woods Committee for several years, and I speak for the committee, I think, when I say we find ourselves in an unfortunate position. Nobody wants to make the recommendation we are making, but after many years of turning over many stones, our conclusion is unanimous and clear. The Irvington Woods has now officially been recognized as one of 2 old-growth forests, thanks to the work of CJ and Warwick and a bunch of the kids and this incredible, incredible committee. To Francis's point, they've been a pleasure to work with, and they volunteer so many hours. They care so much. These old-growth trees have witnessed 10 generations of humans. We have a surprisingly robust native forest intact, which is rare and precious, but with less than 5% regeneration, which is devastating. With coming blights due to take down 20% of the forest, in the next 5 years, and deer eating all of the native sprouts, invasive species are going to take over, and the ecosystem will unravel for animals and plants. So what other methods? I know there's a lot of questions. Surely there's other options. We really have looked at them all. Capture and relocation is a popular one. Deer don't like contact. They don't want to be moved from home, which in fact is why we're not overly concerned with all these deer filling the void in the woods. They're actually traumatized by the process to the point where up to 75% die within a year, and it's therefore actually not allowed in Westchester. Contraception and sterilization, experimental efforts are still at a very early research stage with limited success. The permits and drugs required are not available outside of a specialized and approved scientific study. As you may know, Hastings implemented a contraception program with debated results. I have actually spoken to the current and former mayor and trustees who were involved in the process. Ultimately, the DEC did not approve the continuation of the program. Because venison may be consumed by humans, any drug used must be approved by the FDA, and there is nothing currently on the market. Fencing. Deer can jump 10 feet. They're very expensive to build and maintain. It's an ongoing expense. It's true Hastings put up a fence, but they're covering 30 acres, not 250. If you fence just a section, you guarantee the rest of the woods die that much more quickly. We've looked at a lot of solutions and have estimates of upwards of $2.5 million to fence our woods, which would pay for a professional hunter for 80 years. Fences also block the movements of other animals, and as has been said already, they push the problem onto neighboring properties and roads. And then, of course, the result is that everybody puts up their own fence, which I find devastating. Okay, I just want to say this is not open hunting. This is not open season. This is a highly professional, trained person who is doing a service. There is no accidents. This has been practiced safely in parks and reserves all around us now, including Rockefeller and Sawmill River Audubon properties, and those places are seeing regeneration. They have no incidents of problems. It's a proven method.
My name is Rana Horowitz-Bard. I live in Irvington. Honorable Mayor and trustees, I urge you not to support the proposal by the Irvington Woods Committee to kill the deer, also known as, quote, Deer Management Program. And I have read the materials supplied by the Irvington Woods Committee and other materials as well. Let's call it what it is, not culling or harvesting, but killing. The examples given in the information from the Irvington Woods Committee materials includes parks and preserves. What we're talking about is residential communities and backyards. They asked, do we want to live in a gated community? Well, I asked, do we want to live in a killing community? There's been a lot of talk about Lyme disease. There's scientific evidence that ticks are carried on other animals, including birds and chipmunks. It's not only the deer. Their information says that the plan is, quote, safe and effective. I argue that it is neither. The plan is to do the bow hunting Monday through Friday, 4:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. when no one is there. How does the bow hunter know that no one is there in the morning? People are there going for walks, walking their dogs, going running. It is not safe to have the bow hunter in the woods in people's backyards. And they mention that tranquilizer guns are not safe. Well, I would argue that bow hunting is not safe. They say it's effective, but there are studies that are questionable. And we also have heard about that deers don't know borders and can come from other villages. The bow hunter said that during one of the meetings. Their information says that it's discreet. What is discreet about pulling a dead deer body out of the woods in daylight? How can we rush to judgment when there's scientific evidence that the deer may not even be the root of the problem? My 13-year-old son cannot fathom how our village, his home, which he loves, is even considering such a heinous act. My parents, who are in their 80s and couldn't be here tonight and couldn't do the Zoom, agree and are deeply troubled by this. The last part of the Irvington Woods Committee's information on their link says, and I quote, "Humans are the only species left capable of managing the deer population in balance with its habitat. We are ultimately responsible for the problem and the only ones who can make it right," end quote. Exterminating the deer is not, quote, managing the population, end quote, and does not constitute a balance, nor does it solve the problem or, quote, make it right. How can anyone think that barbaric killing in public woods, where people regularly walk, run, and take their dogs at taxpayers' expense with questionable results, with other unexplored options, constitutes, quote, making it right? Aren't we better than that? Thank you.
I have one online.
Yeah, sorry.
We're going in rotation, right?
Yeah.
Melody, if you give your full name, please.
Yes, Melody Kenneth, and I live on Buckout Street in Irvington. I do appreciate all the comments, and it's obvious that there is a need to decrease the deer population to preserve the balance of nature. But I wanted to just say that I read an article online, and it was entitled "Deer Contraception Hits the Target," and I heard the woman that just got up and said that the study supposedly was not effective. I don't know, but I'm just communicating what I read. There was a study done in Hastings-on-Hudson. It began in 2015, so it was some number of years ago. But then, according to the article, went on for a couple of years, and they studied the does. And they went ahead and they darted 60% of the breeding females. And according to this article, that they found that the deer population fell at least 50%, and that over a 5-year period that would continue. I thought that was pretty remarkable. And so, it was stated at the beginning that this is not, however you put that, legal in New York State. I just really, I wish that contraception could really be at least partially considered, because, it's one thing to stop future births, but to kill existing animals, that just doesn't, and I understand there's health problems and all that, so we do need to solve this, but to me, that's a more humane way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, all the way to back. Go ahead. I'm sorry, should beat you to it.
Hi, everybody. My name is Leslie Seary. I'm a member of the Irvington Woods Committee. I lived in Irvington for about 10 years. We're up on Blueberry Hill, close to the O'Hara Nature Center, and I can echo every single thing everyone said. Obviously, I'm fully in support of a deer management plan, and basically, I just want everyone standing or sitting behind me to raise your hand if you're in support of a deer management plan, just so we can kind of get an idea of the room. And that's all I have to say.
Anybody on this side?
Elizabeth Troop, I live up in Deal Point, see deer every day. I want to thank the committee for their very hard work and thorough research, study, and consideration of the deer population issue, and I support their recommendations.
Thank you.
I actually don't have anyone with their hand up at this point.
All right. Okay. That's you, yeah. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Josie Bloom, 6 West Home Place in Irvington. I'm going to be brief. I don't have anything super prepared, but we're looking at an emotional issue. I know that when I first started learning about this issue, I had a huge response. No one wants to joyfully go out and hunt and kill deer. This is the point that we're at. We need to follow the science. We need to follow the extensive and careful and managed research that the Woods Committee has put together. And we also need to consider the cost. Cost to the village. Destroying the woods would cause more flooding, which damages property, car trouble, illness trouble, property damage. We don't need to wait and see. We have examples. Successful deer management programs very close by that have been done. Bow hunting is humane and safe. It's much crueler to let the problem continue the way it is, and the deer will eventually starve. They're going to run out of things to eat. We created this issue by development and elimination of natural predators, and we have to solve it. We're in a difficult position, but we're counting on the board to make this decision to save the woods and to employ the most humane option. We can't plant, fence, or delay our way out of this problem. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Warwick Norton. I'm on the Woods Committee, and I've lived in Irvington for coming up to 9 years. So as we've been hearing, we have a crisis in our woods from one large dominating animal. And as other people have said, we caused this problem by removing the natural predators of deer. And we've amplified the problem because the deer can survive through, a large population of deer can survive through the winter from the food in our gardens. And a deer will eat 8% of its body weight every day. And so for a mature deer, that is about 3,000 pounds per year, which for the 50 deer in our woods, that would equate to 300,000 lettuces. Of course, we don't grow lettuces in our woods, so they eat everything else. They eat the leaves, the buds, the flowers, the shoots, and the small trees. The oak trees in our woods produce millions of acorns, yet we don't have any oak trees in our woods under 20 years old. The only thing that is green on the surface in the woods exists on rocky outcrops where the deer can't get to. So deer are creatures of habit. I see the same 4 deer in my yard every morning. The group is led by a dominant female who stays safe by sticking to areas she knows. That means reducing the deer population in one area like the woods does not immediately create a sink. Reducing the deer population in the woods would have a positive impact on the woods and the neighboring properties, but unfortunately wouldn't have any impact for my garden off South Broadway. The local impact is also being demonstrated in the Rockefeller Preserve. On the east side of the Rockefeller Preserve, where they practice deer management, they're seeing an improvement in the understory and then the ecosystem services, while on the west side, where there is no deer management, the forest continues to decline. So the method has been proven to work. Deer have poor eyesight but excellent smell. except for the deer on Nevis, who are just so brazen, they just stay out there all day. The deer basically bed down during the day, and they come out at dawn and dusk to feed. And you can see these bedding places in the woods, and you can see the trails that the deers make. And this predictable routine means that the deer can be very effectively moved by a professional archer, well away from houses and people, with very little suffering for the deer. I am a pacifist. I will go out and make sure that the deer die quickly, as we've been told, and we certainly won't see wounded deer walking down the street. Thank you.
Do you have one?
Okay.
Hi, this is Melanie Solomon. I live at 4 Camden Court, which is in Legend Hollow. And I have, my house backs up to the, part of the Irvington Woods that's, on our side of Cyrus Field Road. I see a family of, 10 deer every morning and every night in our neighborhood. And so my children, who I was putting to bed tonight while I was having one ear on this meeting, were asking me about the deer management. And my daughter, who's 9, said, "What does that mean? Are we going to kill the deer?" And I said, well, that's one of the options. And I do support that plan that the Irvington Woods Committee has very carefully laid out. I think it makes the most sense. And even my 9-year-old understood that that made sense. And I told her that the venison meat would be donated to food pantries, and she was pleased with that. So I just think it makes sense. The committee has done the work. They've been studying this for years, and they have found the solution that makes the most sense. It's not going to feel good to anyone, but it makes sense. The fencing does not make sense. We are right next to the sawmill. The deer are already lining the sawmill every night. I don't know where a fence would even go, but it would push those deer even closer to the sawmill. And then there would be, more of a mess to deal with on the sawmill than there already is on a normal basis. So I just wanted to express that opinion and thank the board for your attention on this matter, and thank the Woods Committee for all the work that they've done. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Yes. Gotten everybody around you, but not you yet, so.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is this on?
It is for the web.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Mitchell. Jeff Glick. I live at Five Stearns Ridge next to the woods. I'm in there every day with my wife and our kids and our dogs. And we have seen the deterioration over the 10 years we've lived here and the absolute denuding of the ecology of the forest. I respect all the different views expressed. I know from good-hearted intentions from many people opposed to the plan, but I have to say, the Woods Committee has studied this for years. The ecologists and scientists have looked at this. This is absolute, I support completely the Woods Committee recommendation. And one thing that hasn't been discussed today, and I speak not on behalf of Friends of the Earth, but I'm chairman of a 3 million member environmental organization called Friends of the Earth. And climate change is something that is deeply impacting our woods. This is one of the last old growth, large forest stands south of 287. It's the biggest south out of 287. Because of climate change, our trees are already in danger, beech leaf disease and other things. That is going to, we live on a hill as a community, so that means more flooding, more soil erosion. We are already losing trees, and because of a 7-fold overpopulation of deer, we cannot regenerate a single tree in this forest. You are the stewards of this forest, and it is unconscionable to oppose this program, because all of those who fear that this is inhumane should think about having to murder every tree, every mouse, every bird, every frog, every rabbit, every fox, every owl, because if you don't do something, you are consigning those animals and the whole ecology of the interconnected web to death. And so the ignorance in opposing this plan is just striking to me. As to the fence idea, that is a $2 million monstrosity. In my post on this, we didn't even get into how opposed to habitat maintenance a fence is, because You want interconnected open space so that foxes and rabbits and what can move. So if you're going to take 7 times more deer and fence them in, you're either concentrating the problem inside the fence or you're pushing it onto our roads. This is a vast report. Those who said it hasn't been studied, hundreds of pages of analysis have been put into this. As to the alternatives, I don't have time to discuss all of them as Charlotte did, but to relocate them to a deer farm where they are just raised for meat is not a more humane solution. And we know that relocating deer is traumatic to the deer. Economically, a $31,000 program, which does have to continue every year, is much cheaper than a $2 million fence with probably millions in maintenance and surveillance, because the whole fence is useless if it has one hole. One tree falls, one bear pulls through it, some teenagers, the whole $2 million is wasted. And the last thing I would say is, my 13-year-old initially, when I described this program, said, why would we do that? But as we talk through the ecology, I can explain to my children what stewardship of this wonderful forest means in an age of climate change. I have no problem explaining that, and I would ask any responsible adult to study that and explain it to their kids too. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody on this side? And even if no one raises their hand from the section, I'll keep cycling around.
Hi,
Everyone's exhausted or leaves.
Hi, MJ Wilson. I live in Cedar Ridge. And I was a member of the Greenbird Deer Committee way back when. Lots of studies were done, lots of information was gathered. And at that time, there was a vast amount of information from different suburban areas on what to do about deer. So this is not a new issue, not a new problem. And people, we're not making new science. And regarding the Hastings study, I just found out this morning from Dr. Jay Bollinger that study has not yet been peer reviewed, and there's a lot of questions about the data and the quality of the gathering of it. And we lost our last dog due to tick-borne disease, so ticks are kind of personal to me. And just something also to remember, that deer are not forest species, deer are edge species. So the suburban yards are perfect edge species, so we create habitat by which the deer can be very, very happy. Until I run out of time, just some quotes I've got from scientists. Deer have evolved their adaptation based on efficient predation and without them, with efficient predators. And without them, their highly sophisticated adaptation strategies have brought about an explosion of population and built-in ecological imbalances. For those concerned about hunting, the majority of hunting accidents are from people falling out of tree stands, not from weapons. Also, estimated globally, white-tailed deer have the greatest overall population biomass of any wild animal, exceeding that of many species on the plains of Africa. And this was a new thing I didn't know. 45 million deer, which can exceed 300 pounds per male animal, amount to 2.7 million tons of wet biomass worldwide. In the eastern US, deer are found at densities sometimes greater than 40 per square mile. Blah, blah, blah. Why the increase? Much of the land in the eastern US is recovering from early logging, so it's inhabited by colonizing trees that provide excellent cover and abundant food for deer, better than mature forests. We do have mature forests. And along that, deer have adapted to survive the winter by conserving energy and eating the buds of woody shrubs and trees. During this period of limited food availability, overabundant deer population can have significant negative impacts on forest ecosystems. By selectively feeding on seedling and sapling buds below 2 meters in height, deer thwart the growth of young trees. If 50% or more buds are consistently removed from a sapling or seedling, its survival is unlikely. As the next generation of canopy trees providing essential food and cover for forest animals, the health of the seedling and the sapling layer is of great concern to forest ecologists. And that's from Carey Institute, by the way. How much time we got?
27 seconds.
And if anybody wants to know more about the benefit of removing large-scale herbivores, look up the wolf study in Yellowstone, where there's been significant habitat restoration by the reduction, not the extermination, but by the reduction of the elk population. What the Woods Committee is advocating for is not extermination, but reduction of population to a healthy, so there's a healthy ecosystem service load. Thank you.
So I have a written comment. Kathy Sears supports the Irvington Woods Committee proposal. And I have Lisa again.
Hello, my name is Lisa again, and I'm on Havemeyer Road in Irvington. I'm going to try to be brief because so many really important arguments in support of the Woods Committee proposal have already been made. And it was gratifying to hear the depth of consideration given to the issue and how much expertise had been brought to bear. So I just want to reaffirm, although many have said this, that there are two things that are very clear. The woods are disappearing not on a geological scale, but in the span of a few years. Like many others, I have seen the drastic changes in the density of our woods since 2016 in our case. This impacts entire ecosystems, including other plants, wildlife, and smaller mammals, as we've heard. I also believe that morality does not require us to refuse a tough but ultimately more humane choice. Quite the opposite. The appearance of humans has led to the disappearance of any predators that would naturally have controlled the population, and our ways of managing private property and our land have led to the replacement of natural ecosystems with our many lawns, parking lots, and more, meaning that there's less and less for growing populations to eat. In the winter, we in our backyard have hungry deer coming to nibble on boxwoods, which have no nutrition. The deer are facing profound hunger now. As their numbers increase and our forests diminish, this problem will get so much worse. It's not more moral to refuse to engage with the consequences that we have created for the deer, for our forests, and for all the other animals who have no choice but to rely on us to protect their ecosystem. I think our ideas of what is humane are also skewed by what we have to see and confront. Humans cause great harm to animals all the time in ways that we just don't have to witness. Here we're facing a morally charged issue because we're forced to consider the sentience of these animals. I think that's good. And I hear the responses of my neighbors showing that our community is giving this moral issue deep consideration and seeing very compelling and humane reasons to try to reverse the damage that we have done. Quite simply, inaction is action. Letting the deer starve and other animals suffer would be a choice, one that also carries moral responsibility. So like many other parents have said, I have no problem explaining to my children that they will have to confront vexing moral questions in their lifetime. In that generation, many we can't even imagine. And explaining why supporting the Woods Committee recommendation is the morally right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. All the way in the back. Do you have any more? How many more are there?
2 plus a written, yeah.
Good evening. My name is Yasina Surreal. We live on 11 Grinnell Street in Irvington, New York. Our family would like to thank CJ Riley and the Woods Committee for a very professional and thorough study of the need for deer management in our woods. Deer is a beautiful animal, but we cannot let one species keep heavily damaging the woods for the other species. The deer browsing, just like we heard, has very negatively impacted forest vegetation, including trees, shrubs, flowering plants, and seed banks. This impact vegetation has a cascading effect, impacting birds, insects, and small mammals, as well as soils and nutrient flows. Selective browsing of deer of certain plants over others leads to a loss of diversity and an increase in non-native plant species, further deteriorating the ecosystem. Indigenous people have hunted deer and kept their populations in check for hundreds of years. It is a relatively new phenomenon to let the population grow wildly out of control, and the forests and many species are dying as a result. When it comes to the safety of the technique that was suggested, based on what we read, we believe that the bow and arrow technique that started at least 20 years ago and has been safely used in 12 Westchester County parks seems to be quite safe. Based on what was suggested, the hunting would be at times when there are really no people around. I would say 9:30 possibly, yes. But when it comes to where, based on what they recommended would be that the hunter would position himself away from human paths after carefully studying the deer movement for several weeks. So we would like to thank again the committee, and especially also at the end suggesting to donate the deer meat to the people in need. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have 3 written comments, Eric Fensterstock, Mitchell, and Nancy Adler. and Jim DeYonker all support the Woods Committee proposal. And I have Felix Luray.
Hi, good evening. Yeah, Felix Fleury, 62 Ardsley Avenue West. I'll try to be quick and not restate a bunch of the same arguments that have been made. Yeah, unequivocally supportive of the committee recommendation. I would just offer a handful of observations. Number one, we live in a pretty progressive area where I think people care deeply about the environment. In particular, obviously, anyone who's on the Irvington Woods Committee. I'm sure this has been studied extensively, and for people who I understand this could be an emotional issue, just to think that there could be things out there when people argue either based on, anecdotal experience or an article they saw maybe on the internet, to think that the committee hasn't thoroughly vetted alternatives, I think would be mistaken. So I think we should take it as a given that we've explored every avenue out there. And that's number one. Number two, I know, of course, I can imagine, I have young children too. I can imagine what would happen if I told them, well, we're going to kill a bunch of deer. But, I assume most people don't look to their children's opinions to resolve or get, to take a view on difficult issues for obvious reasons, particularly when, involves killing anything. My kids don't understand why we have to kill the wasps that build nests on our home. And lastly, I would just say, as someone who does live near Nevis, selfishly, I don't know if there's any evidence scientific for this, but I'm hoping that this initiative actually creates some fear of humans in the deer, because I think that's part of the problem. I mean, I have relatives in Pennsylvania that, kind of laugh when they come up here. I mean, they don't have this issue partly because, deer are hunted more, more actively there, and they have a fear of humans. And so they don't find them in their yards like we do. So I don't know if there's any scientific evidence for that, but I know, at least in my area, that would be very welcome by myself and all my neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, folks. My name is Peter Clark. I've been in Irvington for about 18 months. We moved into Downingwood. I want to say I admire the debate and the discussion around this in my newfound town. I have worked in environmental sustainability for 15 years, and I'm on the faculty at the Climate School at Columbia. So I have proximity, maybe too much proximity, to our climate future, the climate science, greenhouse gas emissions, climate sources, or emission sources and sinks. And so I want to speak on behalf of the initiative in the context of the forest as a carbon sink. In brief, we so desperately are going to need the trees. And so as a contribution from the town to our climate future, I say we need the trees. And so I strongly endorse.
Thank you. If you're not already on a committee, I'm writing down your expertise. You shouldn't have told us what you did. Okay, anybody on this side? Nope. Online?
Yeah.
No or yes?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Mark,
Go ahead.
yeah.
Hi, I'm Mark Snyder. First of all, thank you for running this meeting. I live in Irvington. Do I have 5 minutes or 10 minutes?
You can,
So
but we won't be
walking I've been walking the woods for 8 years. The change is stark. You can now walk through the woods in any direction and say unequivocally the woods are dying, and this will impact the vast range of animals that live there, as well as reduce the ability to store carbon in the trees. We're just not preserving this ecosystem right now. I think it's clear a fence is practically unworkable, and it also does not solve the overpopulation problem. So absent introducing wolves and mountain lions, and I'm not sure anyone's proposing that, we need hunting. And I appreciate in the proposal, it's a very thoughtful proposal, that the bow hunting will be done from trees, and so aiming downward, and that would seem to eliminate any real risks associated with the program. So in conclusion, I hope you support the proposal from the Woods Committee, and I appreciate their efforts very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, on the aisle, yeah.
My name is Laura Bach. I live with my husband and young son off of Mountain Road with a yard directly overlooking the forest.
I have a degree in zoology. I love animals, and I have a fundamental issue with hunting for sport. However, as an internal medicine physician, I feel compelled to emphasize the severity of a tick-borne illness. Deer cause the primary spread of these tick-borne illnesses, and while some cases can be mild and fully treated, I echo those who have already described the lasting effects of tick-borne illness. As a primary care physician, I hope my patients respond to available treatments, but unfortunately know many will not be cured by available therapies. Many of these patients will suffer from lasting variable effects of Lyme disease. I appreciate the thorough assessment from the Woods Committee, and as an attempt to protect my family and my neighbors, I strongly support the management strategy as presented by the committee. I look to the board to protect the health of our community. I feel we really must do something.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I take it that
David,
just
Swart?
keep popping up, or you have a lot left.
Well, as soon as they raise their hand, they come
I
up.
got
So,
you. Go
right,
ahead.
this happens to be the last one, but there could be
Oh,
more.
gotcha, there'll be more. David?
He's got to unmute himself.
David, I think
There you
you're
go.
on mute.
There you go.
David is really Elaine. Sorry about that. I'm on David's computer. Thank you for this hearing. My name is Elaine Katz, and I am a 30-year resident of the Village of Irvington. I support the Woods Committee's proposal. I am not going to repeat the excellent arguments already made. I would like to only focus my objection to the fence recommendation. It is not a solution. It is merely visiting our problem on our neighbors. Although I currently live in Cottonette Street, I was a resident of the Field Point community. And if there were to be fencing, it would be highly likely that the fencing would lead the deer onto Field Point property. While I was in the Field Point property, my dog was trampled by a deer. I could not get the deer to leave my property, and I needed to call the Irvington Police Department to have someone come from the police department to help me to get the deer who had trampled on my dog to leave my property. I love deer, I love animals, I love my dog, and I love the woods. I'm surprised now that I've moved to Cottonette Street to see more and more deer in the Main Street Village area. This is dangerous for our community. It is dangerous for the deer. It is dangerous for our pets. And as someone who is proud to say that my children so love the village that they have returned and they are raising a child on Mountain Road, I am concerned if you were to have a fence that deer would also be let out into the Mountain Road, East Irvington area. This is dangerous for dogs, humans, children. I just cannot imagine a board deciding to put up a fence and thereby visit the problem that we have created on our neighbors. I strongly object to that, and I thank you for this time.
Thank you. Sorry, the gentleman.
Hi, everyone. My name is Max Carpenter, and my wife Laura, who just beautifully spoke. Son Benjamin and I moved to Irving just about 9 months ago. One of the first memories, very similar to a woman who spoke earlier this morning, I have of being at our new house was waking up a week or two after moving in, boxes still scattered around our bedroom, looking out the window through the morning fog and seeing a family of 5 deer grazing in the backyard. I ran over and grabbed Benjamin so he could have a look as well, and he immediately pointed to the deer and screeched in delight. Having moved from New York City, it was such a perfect encapsulation of our new neighborhood, and we just sat there and watched them for 30 minutes. If you had told me then that I'd be standing here now supporting this recommendation from the Irvington Woods Committee, I wouldn't have believed you. And yet here I am, and I hope to give you a sense why in the brief couple minutes I have. I just recently joined the Irvington Woods Committee, and sorry, I didn't mention, I do live with my wife on Mountain Road. And so in the very few little time I've spent with this group of people and just having joined last month, The one thing that struck me is just the passion and level of expertise that they have in this area. It's a group of individuals who have dedicated so much time, energy, and resources to this cause, and ones who have accepted that burden because they truly want what is best for this community. You've already heard from a number on the committee tonight who've explained far better than I can why this is the best and honestly only solution that we have, who clarified some of the misconceptions that I think some who are rightly concerned about the plan might have had, and really addressed a lot of those. The one thing that I want to directly speak to is the question that some of the concerned citizens have asked about if our solution represents the kind of village that we want to be. And my answer to that question is absolutely 100% yes. I personally want to be part of a village and a community that has a board of trustees that is willing to tackle difficult problems head on despite their difficulty, that has leaders like Zoe and the rest of the IWC who are willing to dedicate their time to answer questions completely and scientifically, to fully explore every other option in depth rather than just recommend something out of convenience. This is not the most convenient solution, both in amount of resources dedicated to it and future resources that need to be dedicated to it. I want to be part of the kind of village that doesn't look to what our neighbors are doing to determine what is right, but rather does the work for ourselves and has the courage to lead by example. I'm so thankful to be a part of a kind of village that is having this conversation and who has accepted us and included us in that conversation. So I thank you guys for taking the time and hearing us, and I so look forward to our years ahead as part of this community. Thank you.
You got one on one? Okay. Yes. I know you've been waiting.
Hi, my name is Amy Ziff. I'm used to going last. Perhaps this is the mark of the end.
That would be good. Don't get me wrong.
I live up at Five Stearns Ridge in the Dearman area, and we border the woods, and we moved to Irvington partly because of the woods. I'm in there, as Larry knows, nearly every day with my dogs, and I too have witnessed the deforestation and the decimation of the canopy, what's above and what is below. And for my work, I actually run a nonprofit and NGO, and we do ecosystem consideration. And we think about the generations to come and what we're leaving, and our mark on the ecosystem as the top predator in species. And often what my organization stands for is to say we speak for those who cannot speak for themselves because they have no voice. So we speak for the animals, and we speak for the trees. And I want to stand here tonight and say I want to speak for the rest of the animals, not the deer. The deer have spoken. And I want to speak for the trees because they give us the oxygen that we need to breathe, to live, for vibrance and for resilience. So I want to hit on the note that says we are talking about not taking all the deer out, but just restoring to a number that will allow our native ecosystem to be resilient. And we are going to need those today and tomorrow and for the generations to come after us in Irvington. So when we are gone, let those woods stand. Let's protect them. I highly hope that you will take the Irvington Woods Committee on the recommendation to do this work. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody on this side? Online, Laura? This side? Rick?
Hello, Rick Rizzullo, member of the Woods Committee. as everybody on the board knows, there's many other things that I do, but what I want to speak to tonight is something. What's that? Yeah, we don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. I only got 3 minutes, and he's watching the clock. So.
No, we stopped you so you could start again.
Well, that's all right. One of the things that I want to talk about, or the main thing that I want to talk about tonight, is not what you've heard from the Woods Committee, which I'm a member of. Not that, as the president of the board of directors of 120 North Broadway, we've spent tens of thousands over the last 35 years that I know of on, reinvigorating all our plantings and our shrubs, primarily the shrubs. What I want to do tonight is talk about having been in your position. Because as you know, I've sat in one of those chairs quite a ways back. And at the risk of sounding like the Cowardly Lion, I want to talk about courage. Because right now, courage is the only thing between doing the right thing by the woods. And I'm sure you've heard from this side, and from the, I'll speak to the screen. At any rate, we know that you have pressures from both sides, and even a greater overall pressure from the perception of what this decision is going to mean. And I think, from what I know of everybody on the board, having heard what you heard tonight, I do believe you have the courage to make the right decision. And that right decision is to take the Woods Committee's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. This side, on my right. Remains to be seen.
Well, we'll find out. Hi, I'm Michael Shamish, my wife over there, 36-year resident of Irvington, raised 2 kids here, all of whom have Lyme disease. We've all got Lyme disease, but none lately because we just don't go in the woods. But I'm trying to, in listening to all this, and I support work and CJ and the Woods Committee, I'm trying to figure out is just who are we? Who are we? What are we talking about here? If the deer were rats, what would we do? What would you do? Would you say, get rid of those rats? They're ugly. I want them out of there. But we seem to have a visual attachment to the deer, or a visceral attachment to the deer that go beyond reality in many cases. There seems to be a sympathetic attachment to deer. If there were any other species that was hideous or ugly, why are we even talking about this? Get them the heck out of there. Get them out of the woods. We don't want them. If instead, the deer were an ugly species, we'd have no problem driving up and ordering a McBandy. I mean, it would be not a problem. We have a steakhouse down here. We have no problem with eating that. You can buy meat at any store. We have no problem with any of that. But the committee, I mean, you have to ask yourself, why are we arguing about deer? This is, now, fence isn't going to work. Fences me out. Forget that. It fences the humans out. It's what it does, and confines the deer. And this is open space, so why should I ruin my quality of life to save a population of deer that is running amok? I think this seems to be the, look, do I want to see deer get shot by bow and arrow? No, I don't know. Nobody wants that here. But what else are you going to do? And you have to eliminate the visceral attachment to the deer from your decision making. This is, it's like a judge saying on a trial, you have to remove the emotional attachment and listen to the law and make your decision based on law and fact, and not on any emotional attachment. Just say, call them rats with tails, call them anything you want, doing damage to the ecosystem and causing harm to humans and in some cases tragedy to humans on the roads. So I would ask you to think about it that way and try to remove yourself from, don't call them deer, call them ungapach, call them anything you want, but think of them as just another creature that is doing some harm at the moment. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Anybody on this side, online? Anybody on this side? Going once, twice, 3 times, okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. Obviously, it's a somewhat complex issue, and I'm not going to speak, actually, I'm not even going to speak for myself, but I certainly won't presume to speak for anybody else on this board, but we will have work sessions to discuss it amongst ourselves, and then we will decide where we go with it. But I do want to thank the Woods Committee. I want to thank the people who opposed the Woods Committee and the people who supported it. It's much appreciated. And the decision, for better or worse, is ours to make at this moment. So we will get to making that decision. Thank you very much and have a good evening.